He vanished after a single 911 call. 17 years later, a fisherman hooks something cold that changes everything. You must join our channel and hit subscribe, because only those who never stop searching for lost voices will do it before this story begins. The sharp crash of a chair hitting the floor shattered the brittle quiet of the small living room. Ethan Reed's small hands trembled as he clutched the phone tightly, the plastic cold against his palm. His breath came in shallow gasps, barely loud enough to hear over the furious shouting from behind the cracked front door. "Please?" Ethan whispered into the receiver, his voice shaking like autumn leaves in the wind. "Someone help, my dad is mad." The dial tone hummed softly in his ear, a thin lifeline stretching between the terror in this dimly lit room and the stranger on the other end. Heavy footsteps thundered closer, shaking the faded wooden floor beneath Ethan's feet. His eyes darted toward the door, wide and brimming with fear, but he didn't dare move. The yelling grew louder, filled with anger and pain. His father's voice, raw and jagged, breaking the fragile silence that had settled like dust over their broken home. The air smelled stale, a mix of damp wood, old smoke, and the faint tang of something bitter. Anger, Ethan thought. The single flickering bulb above cast long shadows that danced like monsters on the cracked wallpaper. Each second stretched painfully, the noise pounding in Ethan's ears as his tiny fingers clenched the phone tighter. Then the door burst open. Ethan barely had time to squeeze his eyes shut before strong arms reached in, yanking the phone from his grasp. His father's face, contorted with fury and despair, loomed over him. "Stop this nonsense," the man barked, voice hoarse and trembling, like a volcano about to erupt. Ethan shrank back against the cracked wall, heart hammering as the man's eyes flicked with wild rage and something far older, a sadness that Ethan didn't understand but felt deep in his bones. The harsh lines of exhaustion around his father's eyes spoke of years of battles lost and hopes crushed beneath heavy boots. "You don't need anyone coming here," his father growled, dragging Ethan to his feet with a grip that was firm but not yet cruel. The boy's knees shook, and tears welled unbidden, but he forced himself not to cry out. Somewhere deep inside, a fragile thread of hope clung tight. Maybe, just maybe, someone would still hear him, would still come. But that hope was quickly swallowed by the cold weight of silence that followed. No one saw the boy leave that night. No one heard his footsteps disappear into the darkness outside. The wind carried away any whispered cries, folding them into the rustling autumn leaves that scattered across the empty streets of Harrow's Bay. The town's fishing boats rocked gently in the harbor, unaware of the small life slipping away from its shore. Windows glowed softly from homes filled with families preparing for the night, while Ethan vanished like a ghost. In the days that followed, whispers stirred like restless ghosts in the marketplace and the narrow alleys. "He's gone," some said with heavy hearts, "lost to the cold sea or the shadows of a broken home." But no one dared speak too loudly, and fewer still dared search too hard. The memory of the boy who disappeared haunted Harrow's Bay, an ache no one could name. 17 years later, the pain remained, buried but alive. Jonah Reed sat alone by the rocky shore, the chill autumn wind tugging at his threadbare jacket. The small silver anchor keychain hung from his fingers, its worn edges smooth against his skin. He turned it over slowly, tracing the familiar shape, a relic of a brother lost too soon. The waves whispered softly beneath a fading sky, blending with the heavy silence in Jonah's chest. His gaze stretched out toward the horizon, where sea and sky blurred into one endless gray. "I just want to know he's safe," Jonah murmured, voice low and filled with longing. The words swallowed by the sea breeze, as if sent to reach across the years and miles to the brother he never stopped searching for. The salt air hung heavy around Jonah as he stood at the edge of his small fishing boat, the early morning mist curling like ghostly fingers over the glassy surface of Harrow's Bay. The sky was a muted canvas of gray, promising rain but holding back for now, while gulls cried overhead, their sharp calls piercing the quiet. Jonah's hands, rough and weathered from years of labor, pulled the heavy nets from the water with practiced ease. His movements were slow, deliberate, almost mechanical, as if part of him drifted elsewhere, lost in memories he couldn't shake. Suddenly, his fingers brushed against something cold and hard tangled deep within the mesh. He paused, heart quickening, and carefully pulled at the line until the object emerged. In the dim light, the shape was unmistakable. A small silver anchor, its surface dulled by years of salt and time. Jonah's breath caught, his knuckles whitening as he gripped it tightly. The keychain was exactly like the one his brother Ethan had carried when he vanished 17 years ago. The same keychain he had kept close, a symbol of hope and home. Jonah's eyes burned with a mixture of disbelief and something deeper, hope. His throat tightened. Could this be a sign? Had Ethan truly been out there all this time, somewhere in the vastness beyond the shore? Or was it a cruel trick of fate, a fragment of a past that should have stayed buried? The cold metal felt heavy in his palm. More than just an object, it was a weight of memories, promises, and unanswered questions. He sat back on the edge of the boat, the wooden planks creaking beneath him. The sea was calm, but inside Jonah, a storm raged. His mind raced through every moment since that terrible night when Ethan disappeared without a trace. The silences, the whispered rumors, the sharp pangs of loss that never fully healed. Around him, the quiet town of Harrow's Bay was waking up, but Jonah felt more alone than ever. "Jonah?" A voice called out across the water. It was Caleb, his oldest friend and fellow fisherman, pulling alongside him in a smaller boat. Caleb's face was open and concerned, his dark eyes searching Jonah's. "What's going on? You look like you've seen a ghost." Jonah didn't answer immediately. His gaze lingered on the keychain, then back to the restless water beyond the horizon. Finally, his voice broke through the morning chill, low and uncertain. "It's something I didn't think I'd ever see again." He held out the anchor, the metal catching the faint light. "This belonged to Ethan." Caleb's brow furrowed. "Ethan Reed? I thought everyone here had given up on that story years ago." "Me too," Jonah said, swallowing hard. "But this changes things." His fingers tightened around the keychain, as if drawing strength from it. "It can't be just a coincidence." The news of the silver anchor keychain spread through Harrow's Bay like wildfire, stirring whispers in every corner of the small town. Faces that usually wore the calm of weathered fishermen and quiet shopkeepers now flickered with a restless mixture of hope and fear. The air seemed heavier, charged with unspoken questions. Jonah felt it immediately, the curious eyes, the cautious glances, and the subtle distance growing between old friends and neighbors. But none of it weighed as heavily as the silence that had settled like a storm cloud in his own home. That evening, as the sun slipped behind the thick line of trees bordering the coast, Jonah stepped through the creaking door of the Reed house. The familiar scent of salt and damp wood mixed with the faint sting of stale whiskey. The house seemed smaller somehow, tighter, like it was closing in on him. His footsteps echoed softly against the worn floorboards as he made his way to the dimly lit kitchen. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, casting long shadows that danced uneasily along the cracked walls. Greg Reed sat hunched over the kitchen table, his broad shoulders sagging under the weight of years spent battling ghosts no one else could see. His face was a map of lines etched deep by regret and exhaustion, his beard unkempt and peppered with gray. He lifted his glass slowly, eyes clouded and distant, before taking a bitter sip. Jonah's heart clenched at the sight, knowing that beneath that weathered exterior was a man fractured by guilt. Without a word, Jonah set the tarnished keychain on the table between them. The metal caught the faint light, reflecting a dull gleam that seemed to pulse with memory and pain. Greg's eyes flicked to it, his jaw tightening. The silence stretched long and thick, filled with everything neither wanted to say. Finally, Greg broke the quiet, his voice rough and low like gravel scraping stone. "Some things are better left buried, Jonah." There was a warning in his tone, heavy with desperation and fear, a plea to let the past remain untouched. His hands trembled slightly as he reached out, almost as if to pull the memory back under the surface. Jonah met his father's gaze without flinching. Inside, a storm was building, anger, frustration, and an unyielding need for truth clashing against the walls of his own doubt. "I have to find out what really happened to Ethan," he said, voice steady but charged with emotion. His eyes blazed with quiet determination, a fire that had been smoldering since that distant night years ago. Jonah stepped onto the weathered wooden porch of the old fisherman's shack just as a sharp wind cut through the evening air. The sky was heavy with low-hanging clouds, and distant thunder rumbled softly, echoing the storm that had once swallowed his brother whole. He tightened his jacket against the chill and rapped firmly on the cracked door. The faint scent of salt and aged wood seeped through the gaps as the door creaked open. Marcus Hale stood in the doorway, his frame hunched beneath a worn fisherman's coat, eyes shadowed with years of memories and regrets. His gray beard was tangled and wild, and his hands trembled slightly as he gestured for Jonah to enter. The shack was cramped, dimly lit by a single flickering lantern that cast long, restless shadows on peeling walls. Nets and fishing gear cluttered the corners, remnants of a life tethered to the merciless sea. Jonah's heart hammered as he stepped inside, the musty air thick with the weight of stories untold. He glanced around, searching for any sign of warmth or hope, but found only the hollow ache of solitude. "Mr. Hale," Jonah began, voice steady but laced with urgency, "I need to know what you saw that night, about Ethan." His eyes locked on the older man's face, searching for answers in the deep lines etched by time. Marcus shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting toward the window where rain began to tap a steady rhythm against the glass. "I saw him, lad," he said finally, voice rough like gravel. "But he wasn't the same boy I knew." Jonah's brow furrowed. "What do you mean? How was he different?" Marcus pulled a battered chair closer to the table and sank into it with a sigh. He ran a weathered hand over his face, as if brushing away ghosts. "That night, the storm was fierce, the kind that shakes you to your bones. I was out near the cliffs, checking traps when I saw him. A boy, soaked to the skin, standing just at the edge where the rocks met the sea." The room seemed to grow colder as Marcus spoke, his voice dropping to a whisper. But there was something in his eyes, something distant, lost. Not the boy who'd grown up here, not the one full of laughter and mischief. He looked scared but also wary, like he was hiding from more than just the storm. Jonah swallowed hard, his fingers tightening around the sleeve of his jacket. A knot twisted in his stomach, mixing hope with dread. "Did you talk to him?" Marcus shook his head slowly. "No. The moment he saw me, he turned away and vanished into the darkness. I called after him, but the wind swallowed my voice. I've thought about it every day since." Jonah paced the small room, the silence between them thick and heavy. His mind raced with possibilities, the image of Ethan on those cliffs flashing like a shadow in his memory. Was it really him, or something else altogether? The idea that his brother could still be alive, yet changed beyond recognition, felt both like a lifeline and a curse. What if he's been hiding all these years, afraid to come home? Jonah asked, desperation bleeding into his tone. Marcus's eyes met his, steady and somber. "There's darkness in this town, lad. Things that don't like to be disturbed. Sometimes, the truth is more dangerous than the lie." The old man's words settled over Jonah like a cold fog, chilling but strangely clarifying. He realized that uncovering the truth about Ethan would not be simple. There were forces, known or unknown, that had shaped his brother's fate and might still be watching, waiting. Jonah's gaze drifted to the window, where rain now fell harder, blurring the jagged outlines of the cliffs beyond. The wind howled through the cracks of the shack, as if carrying whispered warnings. He felt the weight of his quest pressing down, heavier than ever before. But with every doubt, his resolve grew stronger. He owed it to Ethan, to himself, to keep searching, no matter the cost. "You're chasing ghosts," Marcus said quietly. "But some ghosts don't want to be found." Jonah sat hunched over the cluttered desk in the dim back corner of Harrow's Bay's small library, his fingers trembling slightly as he carefully lifted the brittle leather cover of the old journal. The dusty scent of aged paper filled the air, mingling with the faint smell of salt and seaweed that clung to his worn jacket. Outside, a chill wind swept through the empty streets, rattling the loose window panes and carrying the distant calls of seagulls circling over the bay. Jonah's eyes darted across the yellowed pages, each filled with Ethan's cramped handwriting and curious sketches. The bay's rocky cliffs, a tangled maze of underwater caves, strange symbols etched along the shore. His breath hitched as he traced the lines drawn in careful detail, recognizing places he had only heard of in whispered rumors. The words, "secret place," and "someone watching" appeared repeatedly, scrawled in ink that had faded but never quite disappeared. Jonah's pulse hammered in his ears, his heart caught in a mixture of hope and dread. Could his brother have really uncovered something hidden beneath the calm waters? Something dangerous enough to silence him? The shadows of the library seemed to grow longer as Jonah flipped through the pages, the dim light from the lone overhead bulb casting flickering patterns on the floor. Each note was a puzzle piece, a glimpse into a world Ethan had been too afraid to share. He paused on a page filled with jagged drawings of caves and strange symbols, the margins scribbled with warnings. "Do not trust. They are watching," and most haunting of all, "If I disappear, they know where I went." Jonah's hands clenched the silver anchor keychain, the cold metal grounding him amid the swirl of fear and determination. His voice cracked as he whispered to the empty room. He was trying to tell us something. The night air was sharp and biting as Jonah stood at the edge of the cliffs, the wind tearing at his jacket like a restless ghost. The moon hung low, its pale light casting long, trembling shadows across the jagged rocks beneath him. His breath came out in frosty puffs as he squinted down into the churning black water below, searching for anything that might give away the secrets it held. Then, something caught his eye, a faint, flickering glimmer near the shore, barely visible but impossible to ignore. His heart quickened, a knot tightening deep in his chest. Without hesitation, he began the precarious climb down the slick, uneven rocks, each step testing his balance and resolve. The salty spray stung his face, mingling with the cold sweat of anticipation. Reaching the base of the cliff, Jonah's fingers brushed against rough stone and tangled roots. There, almost hidden beneath a veil of overgrowth and shadow, was a small cave opening, narrow and dark, as if the earth itself wanted to keep its secrets locked away. His pulse hammered in his ears as he crouched to enter, the sharp scent of damp earth and seaweed filling his nostrils. The walls inside were cold and slick with moisture, the silence thick except for the distant rush of waves crashing beyond. As he moved further inside, his eyes adjusted to the dim light, revealing walls etched with strange symbols, curved lines and spirals that matched the sketches in Ethan's worn journal. Each marking seemed to pulse with meaning, a silent code begging to be understood. Jonah's fingers traced the rough carvings, a shiver running down his spine as he absorbed the weight of discovery. This was no ordinary cave. It was a place Ethan had found and feared, a secret world hidden beneath the calm surface of Harrow's Bay. His mind raced with questions and fears, but his feet pushed him deeper into the cold, shadowed chamber. The air grew chillier, the darkness thickening like a living thing. His breath came in shallow bursts, every nerve alert to the unknown. Then, a soft sound shattered the stillness, footsteps, deliberate and slow, echoing faintly behind him. Jonah spun around, his heart leaping into his throat. Standing there, framed by the cave entrance's dim light, was a man with sharp, calculating eyes and a smile that did not reach them. A calm, unsettling expression that sent a ripple of unease through Jonah's core. "I've been waiting for you, Jonah," the stranger said quietly, his voice smooth but carrying a weight that pressed down like the sea itself. There was no anger, no threat in his tone, only an eerie calm that made Jonah's skin crawl. Jonah swallowed hard, his gaze narrowing as he searched the man's face for answers. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside. His fists clenched at his sides, a mixture of fear and determination flooding his veins. The man's smile deepened, a shadow flickering across his features. "Someone who knew Ethan better than you ever did," he replied softly, stepping closer, his eyes never leaving Jonah's. Jonah's breath caught in his throat as Elias Crane stepped fully into the dim light of the cave, the faint glow revealing sharp lines etched deep into the man's face. His eyes, sharp and steady, held a strange mixture of intensity and weariness. The chill in the cave air seemed to deepen, wrapping around Jonah like a warning. Elias didn't waste time with pleasantries. His voice was calm but carried a weight that pressed heavily on Jonah's chest. "Your brother?" Elias began, stepping closer. "He wasn't just a lost boy wandering the shore. Ethan found something hidden beneath these waters. A secret ecosystem that's unlike anything this world has seen." Jonah's eyes narrowed, struggling to keep pace with the man's words. His heart pounded with a mix of disbelief and hope. "What do you mean? What kind of secret?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper, the damp cave walls pressing in around him. Elias's gaze flicked to the strange symbols etched into the rocky walls, then back to Jonah. Beneath Harrow's Bay lies a network of underwater caves, a place teeming with life forms and plants no one else knows about. Rare and fragile, it's a hidden world your brother stumbled upon while exploring. But it's more than just a discovery. It's a treasure that some would kill to control. The words sent a shiver down Jonah's spine. He looked out toward the dark mouth of the cave, the ocean's roar muffled but constant. So Ethan was protecting it? From who? A shadow crossed Elias's face as he lowered his voice. "There are powerful people in this town, men who've long held control over Harrow's Bay's resources. They've used fear and silence to keep the truth buried. Your brother's obsession with guarding the secret put him in grave danger. They wanted to stop him." Jonah's fists clenched at his sides, anger and frustration boiling beneath the surface. "And you think that's why he disappeared? Because he got too close?" Elias nodded solemnly. "Exactly. But the danger isn't over. Others are still searching for him, for the secret, and now, by seeking answers, you've put yourself in their sights." The cave's cold air felt suffocating as Jonah digested the weight of Elias's warning. His mind raced, tangled with fear and determination. "I'm not afraid. I have to find him. If my brother is out there, I will find him," he said firmly, voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside. Elias studied Jonah for a long moment, then allowed a faint, approving smile. "Good, because we don't have much time. If we hesitate, the trail will grow colder, and the forces hunting your brother will tighten their grip." Jonah swallowed hard, the reality of the situation sinking in. This was no longer a simple search for a missing boy. It was a race against shadows, secrets, and unseen enemies. Yet beneath the fear, a fierce hope burned in his chest, sharper and brighter than ever before. "Then we must move quickly. Time is not on our side." If that moment sent chills down your spine and pulled at your heart, don't stay silent. Subscribe and become a member, because sometimes the smallest clues bring the biggest truths. Jonah's breath hitched as he tightened the straps of his diving mask, the cold rubber pressing firmly against his skin. His hands trembled, not just from the chill of the morning air, but from the weight of what lay ahead. The sky was a pale gray, the calm sea stretched out before him like a vast mirror, but the thick fog creeping in sent a shiver down his spine. Elias stood beside him, calm and steady, checking the valves on their oxygen tanks with practiced precision. The marine biologist's dark eyes flickered briefly toward Jonah, silently acknowledging the young man's restless tension. "This cave system isn't forgiving," Elias said quietly, his voice low against the whisper of the waves. "Narrow tunnels, strong currents, and unpredictable shifts in water pressure. We have to be careful every second down there." Jonah nodded, swallowing hard as he forced his racing heart to steady. Every muscle in his body was taut, ready for the plunge. Memories flooded him, Ethan's laughter echoing across the bay, the frightened glance before the boy vanished, the secret journal with its cryptic warnings. Now everything came down to this dive. If Ethan was still out there, somewhere beneath the waves, Jonah would find him or at least uncover the truth. The boat's motor hummed to life, and they pushed off, cutting silently through the fog as it thickened around them. Jonah clutched the silver anchor keychain in his pocket, a small, cold reminder of his brother, and the bond that refused to break despite years of silence. "Ready?" Elias asked, his hand steady on Jonah's shoulder. Jonah met his gaze, the weight of hope and fear mingling in his eyes. "Ready as I'll ever be." They slipped into the water, the cold swallowing Jonah instantly, numbing his limbs but sharpening his focus. The surface blurred behind him as they descended, bubbles trailing from their regulators in slow spirals. The darkness closed in, pierced only by the beams of their flashlights cutting through the murky depths. Jonah's breath echoed softly in his ears as he pushed deeper, the pressure building against his chest. The cave walls loomed close, rough and slick with algae, the passage narrowing to a fragile tunnel barely wider than their bodies. Elias gestured forward, their movements slow and deliberate. Jonah's mind raced, every sound, every shadow a possible sign, every flicker of light a spark of hope. Suddenly, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber, an eerie glow radiating from bioluminescent algae clinging to the jagged rocks. The water shimmered in shades of blue and green, casting ghostly light over the cavern floor strewn with shells and ancient coral. Jonah's flashlight flicked across the space, searching desperately. Then movement. A figure, faint and elusive, shifting in the shadows near a rocky outcrop. Jonah's pulse quickened, his voice trembling as he called out, "Ethan!" The figure froze, a brief pause that stretched into an unbearable moment, then vanished into the blackness beyond. Jonah reached out instinctively, but there was nothing but cold water and silence. His heart pounded fiercely, caught between the desperate hope of a reunion and the crushing weight of uncertainty. "I'm not alone down here," Jonah whispered, fear and hope tangled in his chest. Jonah's footsteps echoed softly on the slick cobblestones, each step swallowed by the thick fog that clung stubbornly to the narrow streets of Harrow's Bay. The night was bitterly cold, the chill biting through his worn jacket and settling deep into his bones. His breath came out in short, visible bursts, swirling and disappearing into the mist as he hurried home. But no matter how fast he walked, the shadow of the cave, the image of that fleeting, pale figure, haunted his every thought. It was like a ghost tethered to his mind, slipping just beyond reach, teasing him with unanswered questions. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled his jacket tighter around him, the silver anchor keychain weighing heavy in his pocket, a constant reminder of the brother he had lost and might still find. "What did I miss?" he muttered under his breath, voice barely audible over the whispering wind. The dive replayed over and over in his mind. The eerie glow of bioluminescent lights, the narrow tunnels twisting like serpents beneath the waves, and that shadowy figure vanishing into the darkness. Was it Ethan? Or something else, something more sinister? A sudden sharp snap of a twig from a nearby alley made Jonah's heart leap. He froze mid-step, straining to catch any other sounds. The streets were otherwise silent, save for the distant roll of the bay's restless waves. His pulse thudded painfully against his ribs. Slowly, he turned his head, eyes scanning the misty veil. At first, he saw nothing, but then, out of the corner of his eye, a figure slipped into the shadows, disappearing behind a crooked corner. A man, dressed in a dark coat, his face obscured beneath a low collar and a worn hat pulled down against the cold. Jonah's breath hitched. The feeling he tried to ignore all day surged into a wave of raw fear. Someone was following him. But why? What did they want? Was it connected to the secrets Ethan had uncovered? Those whispered warnings about the bay, the hidden cave, the men who would kill to protect their silence? He quickened his pace, the clack of his boots now sharp and urgent against the stones. His mind raced, spinning through possibilities. Could he trust Elias, the marine biologist who'd warned him about powerful forces? Or Caleb, the journalist digging into the town's dark past? And what about his own father, Greg, silent and haunted, yet somehow tied to all of it? Each thought felt like a knot tightening around his chest. The fog thickened, curling around street lamps like ghostly fingers. Jonah pulled his collar higher, shielding his face as he glanced again over his shoulder. No sign of the man now. Had he vanished as mysteriously as he had appeared? Or was this just the beginning? Jonah, a voice whispered in his mind. The voice of his brother, distant and fragmented from years ago. It felt like a call to keep going, to face whatever darkness waited. Swallowing the lump of fear, Jonah squared his shoulders, eyes fixed ahead on the path home. He reminded himself of the stakes. The truth wasn't just about his brother anymore. It was about the lives tangled in this town's shadows, the lies buried beneath years of silence. And if he turned back now, those secrets would stay hidden forever. A sudden gust rattled a nearby shutter, making him jump. His heart hammered as he picked up his pace once more, breath steadying despite the cold. The night was heavy with menace, but Jonah's resolve burned brighter than ever. He would not let the shadows win. "I won't let fear stop me," he said under his breath. Jonah stared intently at the glowing screen of his phone, the dim light casting shadows across his furrowed brow. The message from Caleb had arrived just minutes ago, a cryptic note reading simply, "Found something in the archives. Meet me at the old cafe." Without hesitation, Jonah grabbed his worn jacket and slipped out into the early morning fog that clung thickly over Harrow's Bay. The salty scent of the sea mingled with damp earth, and the soft crunch of his boots on the gravel path was the only sound breaking the heavy silence. Caleb was already seated by the window inside the small cafe, his dark eyes sharp behind thick-rimmed glasses as he shuffled a stack of faded papers and brittle folders. His expression was serious, the usual spark of curiosity tempered by a growing sense of unease. "Jonah," he said quietly, motioning toward a dusty ledger lying open on the table. "You're not going to like what I found." Jonah pulled a chair close, his heart pounding as Caleb pointed to the ledger's entries, rows upon rows of names, dates, and cryptic notations. "Look here," Caleb said, tracing a finger down a column. "These are payments, bribes, almost certainly made to fishermen, local officials, even some of the town council. All tied to keeping quiet about what goes on around the bay." His voice dropped lower, a mix of frustration and fear. "And the pattern goes back more than 20 years. Jonah's eyes scanned the page, taking in the names. Some were familiar, men he'd grown up seeing at the docks, faces etched with weather and toil. Others were shadows, ghosts who never talked but whose influence lingered like a heavy fog. "Why hasn't anyone done anything about this?" Jonah asked, voice tight. He clenched his fists under the table, the weight of the betrayal settling deep in his chest. Caleb leaned in closer, lowering his voice even more. "Because this goes beyond just money or corruption. Whoever's behind it controls the whole town's quiet, its secrets. People are scared. Some have disappeared when they got too close. That's why Ethan's disappearance never got a proper investigation." He looked directly at Jonah. "And your father, I'm guessing he's part of the silence." Jonah swallowed hard, feeling the sharp sting of truth. Greg Reed had never been one to open up, but now Jonah understood why. His father's distant eyes, the long silences during their rare conversations, it was more than grief. It was guilt, fear, and something darker. "I tried talking to him again," Jonah admitted, "but he just shuts down, like he's carrying a weight too heavy to share." The room felt colder suddenly, shadows lengthening as the morning light struggled to break through the thick, gray clouds outside. Jonah's mind raced. If this shadowy group had roots deep enough to control officials and intimidate fishermen, then the danger was far closer than he'd dared imagine. Yet despite the fear curling in his stomach, a fierce resolve began to burn brighter. He couldn't let the past be buried any longer. Ethan deserved the truth, and so did the people of Harrow's Bay. "Caleb, what's our next move?" Jonah's voice was steady now, determination threading every word. Caleb exhaled slowly, pushing the ledger toward Jonah. "We gather more proof. If we can connect the dots and expose this, maybe we can finally break their hold. But it won't be easy. They'll watch us, try to stop us." Jonah nodded, his gaze sharp and unwavering. The quiet town he'd known all his life suddenly felt like a battlefield, with unseen enemies lurking behind every familiar face. But the thought of turning back was impossible. For his brother, for his family, For the truth, he would face whatever came next. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the window panes like a warning. Jonah looked out toward the bay, the water's surface restless beneath the low-hanging clouds. Somewhere beneath those waves lay secrets someone had tried to bury forever. This goes deeper than I thought. Jonah stood rigid in the dim light of the kitchen, the single bare bulb swinging faintly overhead. His father, Greg Reed, sat hunched at the scarred wooden table, a half-empty bottle of whiskey beside him, its amber liquid catching the glow. The silence between them was thick, heavy with years of unspoken pain and bitter regrets. Jonah's breath caught as he finally gathered the courage to break the stillness. "Dad, I need to know the truth," he said quietly, voice steady but trembling beneath. Greg's weathered hands clenched into fists on the table, knuckles white, before he slowly looked up. His eyes, clouded and tired, met Jonah's with a raw vulnerability that stunned the younger man. After a long pause, Greg's voice emerged, low and rough, burdened by years of sorrow. "It wasn't just bad luck or a simple runaway, Jonah. Ethan, he found something. Something dangerous." His fingers traced the edge of the bottle, trembling. "Years ago, before all this, Ethan stumbled onto a secret society controlling the bay. Men who weren't interested in the town's welfare. They used the underwater caves for smuggling, stealing rare marine life, things no one was supposed to know about." Jonah felt his pulse quicken, the weight of the revelation pressing down on him like a stone. "Why didn't you tell me?" His voice cracked, eyes searching his father's face for answers. Greg's gaze dropped to the floor, shadows darkening his expression. "I tried, son. I tried to keep Ethan away from it all, to protect him. But you know your brother. Curiosity was a fire that couldn't be doused. He wanted to understand, to see for himself. And that's when they came for him." His voice broke for the first time, a jagged edge of guilt and despair. "When Ethan disappeared, I blamed myself. I drowned in silence, in regret. I thought if I spoke the truth, it would only bring more pain." Jonah's throat tightened as he watched his father struggle with his own confession, the years of burden etched in every line of his face. But beneath the sorrow, a flicker of something stronger appeared in Greg's eyes, an ember of determination long buried. Jonah stepped closer, lowering his voice to a firm, steady whisper. "We can't let them get away with this, Dad. We have to stop them. For Ethan. For the town." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning and a silent promise. Greg lifted his head slowly, meeting Jonah's gaze with a newfound resolve. "You're right. It's time to end this." The old fire kindled, a fragile but fierce light breaking through the darkness of years lost. Jonah's phone vibrated sharply against the worn wooden table, slicing through the heavy silence of the room. He glanced down, heart tightening as he read the terse message blinking on the screen. "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." His fingers hovered over the keypad, hesitating just a moment before locking the phone. The warning was clear, but Jonah's resolve was fiercer. He slid the device into his jacket pocket and took a slow breath, steadying the storm of nerves that threatened to consume him. Across the dimly lit room, Caleb paced restlessly, the faint glow from a single bare bulb casting long shadows against the peeling paint of the old boathouse walls. His face was taut with concern, eyes sharp beneath furrowed brows. "Jonah," Caleb said quietly, voice low but urgent. "This could change everything. Dean's ready, but this isn't just about exposing smugglers anymore. We're poking at something much bigger." Jonah nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. "I know, but if we don't do this now, those secrets will stay buried, and Ethan's disappearance will be just another cold case." His gaze drifted toward the heavy canvas tarp covering a makeshift setup in the corner, an old camera rig hidden just enough to capture every word of the coming confession. The air was thick with salt and dampness, mingling with the sharp scent of diesel and fish that clung to the boathouse. Outside, the night was restless, wind rattling loose boards and carrying distant cries of seagulls. The faint hum of the town seemed to pause in anticipation, as if the whole of Harrow's Bay was holding its breath. A soft knock echoed through the space, causing Jonah's pulse to spike. The door creaked open, and Dean stepped inside. A tall, weathered man whose rough hands and lined face told of years spent battling the unforgiving sea. His eyes darted nervously, betraying the weight of the secret he carried. He pulled his coat tighter against the chill, voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want to come back here, but it's time. Time to stop running." Jonah stepped forward, offering a steadying smile. "We're here to listen, Dean. Whatever you say stays safe with us until it's time to set it free." Dean's breath hitched, a flicker of fear crossing his features. "They've got eyes everywhere. Men who won't hesitate to silence anyone who talks. You have to understand that. This isn't just smuggling fish or hiding illegal traps. This goes deeper. Much deeper." Caleb clicked on the recorder, its soft red light pulsing like a heartbeat in the dimness. "Whenever you're ready," he said, voice calm but firm. Dean took a ragged breath and began, his words stumbling at first but growing with urgency. "The society, it's more than a group. It's a chain, power, money, silence. They use the caves not just for smuggling but for other things. Things that can ruin this town if they're ever exposed." Ethan found out too much. He was curious, like a boy should be, but they didn't want anyone poking around. Jonah clenched his fists, anger flickering beneath his calm exterior. What happened to him? Dean swallowed hard, eyes flickering toward the dark windows as if expecting shadows to leap inside. "They made him disappear. No one talks about it, but I saw the night they took him. Tried to warn your father once, but he wouldn't listen. Thought it was safer to stay quiet." The tension in the room thickened, the weight of Dean's confession pressing down like the heavy fog outside. Jonah's mind raced, every piece falling into place, every silent fear now spoken aloud. He glanced at Caleb, who gave a slight nod, signaling that the recording was capturing every word. Suddenly, a sharp noise cracked through the night air. A car door slamming somewhere close, tires crunching gravel. Dean stiffened, eyes wide with panic. "They're close. They know we're here." His voice trembled. "If they come in, we're done." Jonah moved quickly, pulling the tarp over the camera, muffling its red glow. "Stay calm. We're not giving them the satisfaction." His tone was steady, a silent command to keep fear at bay. The seconds stretched unbearably. Footsteps approached, slow and deliberate. A shadow passed by the grimy window, then vanished into the darkness. The wind howled louder, drowning out the world for a heartbeat. When silence returned, Dean let out a shaky breath. That was close. Too close. He sank onto a crate, exhaustion washing over him. "I'm done running, but I don't know if it's enough." Jonah leaned forward, voice resolute. "It's more than enough. This confession, when it reaches the right hands, will crack the whole thing open. We just have to be smart." Caleb packed up the recorder, the red light fading as he turned off the device. "I'll send this out tonight, anonymously. Media, authorities, we give them no chance to ignore it." Jonah's heart pounded with a cautious hope, the first flicker of light after years of darkness. Outside, the wind whispered secrets through the broken slats of the boathouse, and for the first time in a long while, the night felt less heavy. He glanced down at the silver anchor keychain hanging around his neck, its cold metal a steady reminder of what was at stake. The truth is finally coming out. The air in Harrow's Bay was thick with tension, as if the very town itself was holding its breath. Word of Dean's confession had spread like wildfire, igniting fear and fury in equal measure. Police cruisers patrolled the narrow streets more frequently now, their flashing lights a restless heartbeat against the darkening sky. Jonah Reed moved through the shadows of the town with cautious steps, his eyes scanning every corner, every alley. The quiet whispers behind closed doors and the sideways glances from neighbors reminded him how fragile the calm really was. Inside the cramped office of Caleb's modest newspaper, the air smelled of ink and stale coffee. Caleb leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "They're not taking this lying down," he said quietly, voice edged with concern. "The ones we're exposing, those powerful men, they're digging in deep. Threats are coming through. I've had one on my desk this morning. Jonah's jaw tightened. And me? What about me? His voice was low, but the weight behind it was heavy. Caleb met his gaze steadily. Same. We're both in their sights now. But we can't back down. Not when we're this close. Jonah nodded, swallowing the knot of fear rising in his throat. The faces of the men arrested flashed through his mind. City officials, fishermen, businessmen all caught in a web of lies and greed. Yet, for every head that fell, others seemed to lurk in the shadows, waiting, watching. He could almost feel their eyes burning into his back. A constant, chilling reminder that the fight was far from over. The nights grew longer, and with them came unease. Walking home through the silent streets, Jonah's footsteps echoed unervingly in the stillness. Every rustle of wind through the trees, every distant bark of a dog, seemed amplified in the quiet. He could not shake the feeling of being followed, though no one ever showed themselves. His mind replayed the whispered warnings Elias had given, the threats Caleb had reported. They're ruthless, Elias had said, and they will stop at nothing. One evening, Jonah sat alone by the edge of the pier, the cold sea air biting at his skin. The water stretched before him, dark and restless under the moonlight, waves lapping against weathered wooden posts. His hands clenched the silver anchor keychain tightly, the familiar weight grounding him amid the storm of his thoughts. Ethan, he whispered, voice barely audible over the breeze. Where are you? His phone buzzed sharply against the worn wood. Jonah's heart jumped. He fumbled to pull it out, eyes scanning the screen. An unknown number. Hesitation curled inside him like a coiled snake, but the curiosity was stronger. He tapped the message open. A video file. The screen flickered to life, grainy but unmistakable. A figure stood at the edge of the cliffs that bordered Harrow's Bay, silhouetted against the crashing waves below. The man was thin, almost too thin, his pale skin stark against the night. He didn't move, just watched the sea as the wind tangled his dark hair. Jonah's breath caught in his throat. The figure's profile was hauntingly familiar, features worn and changed by time and hardship, but there was no mistaking the look in those distant eyes. Could it really be him? Jonah's voice cracked, his fingers trembling as he replayed the clip. The figure did not turn toward the camera, as if aware of being watched but unwilling to reveal himself. The waves crashed louder now, a fierce reminder of the gulf between them. Jonah's mind raced with a surge of hope and fear tangled together like storm clouds. Was Ethan truly out there, still alive but hidden in the shadows of the bay's secrets? Or was this a cruel mirage, a ghost crafted by longing and desperation? The questions clawed at him, relentless and raw. As the video ended, Jonah's eyes lifted to the cliffs beyond the water, dark and mysterious beneath the moon's pale glow. The silence stretched thick around him, broken only by the steady rhythm of the sea. A fragile thread of hope wove itself into the cold night air. He's still out there, waiting for us. Jonah stood at the edge of the cliff, the cold wind tugging at his worn jacket and whipping his dark hair across his face. His fingers tightened around the silver anchor keychain, its weight both comforting and heavy with meaning. The moon hung low, casting a silver glow over the restless sea below. Each wave crashed against the rocks with a steady roar, like a voice from the depths calling out to him, a reminder of everything lost and everything still waiting to be found. The salt air filled his lungs, sharp and bracing, mingling with the bittersweet ache that knotted his chest. His eyes scanned the horizon where sky met water in a seamless blur, searching for answers that still eluded him after all these years. The town of Harrow's Bay lay quiet behind him, slowly stitching its wounds after the storm of revelations and justice that had begun to change everything. But the mystery that had haunted his family for nearly 2 decades lingered like a shadow, stubborn and unresolved. Jonah's breath fogged in the cool night air as he whispered, "I won't give up, Ethan. Not now." His voice was steady but carried the weight of years of hope and heartbreak. The cold metal against his palm was a lifeline, a tangible connection to his missing brother. He remembered the night Ethan vanished, the terror in his eyes, the last desperate call for help that had been cut short, and the silence that followed. That silence had filled every corner of Jonah's life, driving him to uncover truths some wanted buried forever. He looked down at the keychain again, the tiny anchor dulled by time and salt but still strong, just like the bond between them. The thought gave him strength even as doubt gnawed at the edges of his mind. Had Ethan really survived all this time? Was he out there, hidden beneath these very waves, or lost forever in the darkness Jonah could not yet penetrate? The uncertainty was a storm in itself, but Jonah knew that without hope, the search would end before it truly began. Behind him, the faint glow of the town's lights flickered like distant stars, a fragile beacon against the night. The people of Harrow's Bay were beginning to breathe easier, their whispered fears replaced by cautious optimism. Justice had shaken the roots of corruption, exposing those who had kept the town chained to secrets and lies. Yet, as the weight of those revelations settled, Jonah felt the heavy truth. Some wounds run deeper than any law can heal, and some stories refuse to end cleanly. A sudden chill swept over the cliffside, and Jonah pulled his jacket tighter. He thought of the faces he had met on this journey, the old fisherman who had glimpsed a changed boy, the marine biologist who had opened his eyes to a hidden world beneath the surface, the whistleblower who had risked everything for the truth. Each had left a mark on his heart, fueling a fire that burned brighter with every step. Yet none had brought him closer to Ethan. Not yet. The silence around him stretched, broken only by the ceaseless murmur of the sea. Jonah closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him like a prayer. Memories surfaced, Ethan's laughter echoing through sunlit afternoons, the way his small hand had fit perfectly in Jonah's own, the shared dreams whispered under starlit skies. Those moments were shards of light piercing the long night of loss. Opening his eyes, Jonah scanned the jagged cliffs once more, as if willing a sign to appear. The moonlight revealed faint shapes etched into the rock face, ancient and mysterious, like echoes of secrets long buried beneath the earth and water. A whisper of wind carried a faint scent of brine and pine, stirring the fragile hope within him. It was enough to keep going. It had to be. A low voice broke the stillness, his own, barely more than a breath. "I'll find you, Ethan, no matter how long it takes." The words held a promise, raw and unyielding. Jonah's gaze lifted to the vast expanse before him, a silent vow cast out to the endless night. The anchor swung gently in his hand, steady as the heartbeat of the bay itself. In that moment, Jonah understood that some battles were not about endings, but about the courage to keep searching. The road ahead was uncertain and fraught with shadows, but he was ready. Ready to face whatever lay beneath the waves, ready to carry the weight of truth, and ready to hold on to hope when all else seemed lost. The cold keychain felt like a lifeline, a symbol of a bond that not even time or darkness could break. Sometimes the deepest wounds hide the strongest hope. The past may be cold, but hope warms the soul. If you stand for truth, justice, and resilience, hit subscribe and join the channel. Together we rise. Disclaimer: the story you just watched is fictional, created to explore themes of mystery, loss, and the long shadows of domestic abuse. Its purpose is to engage viewers and inspire reflection on hope, justice, and the search for truth.